Okay, Paul, this one's got you in a tizzy, and now I think I understand why.
Yep.
First, today we're going to talk about plastic forks. And then we're actually going to transition a little bit later on into another topic that could be even more serious, and we're just kind of ignoring it. But I did want to address this because a new law has come into place, and we are moving from plastic forks to wooden forks.
Well, so it's interesting. So the government came out, the Liberal government came out and said single-use plastics restricted, you can't use them anymore,
Right.
and we went to wood. Then the Coalition for Plastics, the Responsible Plastics Use Coalition, came out and sued the government,
Right.
and they won. So you remember that period where we all were like converting. I know I was converting to all wooden utensils for
Yeah.
takeout.
Yeah.
So, and people hated it. They hated that.
Please tell me this also included the banning of paper straws, which I detest.
Wow. So paper straws came, plastic straws went, paper straws came. Then all of a sudden they won their lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
The Liberal government appealed, and now they've won on appeal. The last few days they've won their appeal.
Yeah.
So now we're back to being restricted. So we're all going back to wood again and paper straws. And quite frankly, in the worst time ever, in the middle of the winter. So if you're a restaurant, you're a takeout place, you're actually converting back now. You're going to be required to. You're going to convert back. You're going to get out of that. People don't like to use them, so they're not going to come to your place as much. And also on the news that 4,000, the Restaurant Association of Canada came out and said 4,000 restaurants, takeout places are going to close this upcoming year in 2026. So all those things coming out. And so, you know what? I saw it and I'm thinking, okay, right? Is this kind of virtue signaling, or is this real? My investigative mind turned on. And so I started taking a look. So I took a look at the Responsible Plastics Use Coalition, which is mostly plastic guys, right? Everyone knows. We're not going to, there's some big players in that group. And of course, they're trying to protect their livelihood. They're trying to protect their businesses. So they come out and they make a bunch of statements. And the statements are, they're not toxic. So, and there's no scientific proof that these single-use plastics are toxic.
Yeah.
And so, I'm thinking to myself, I just moved into a new neighborhood, and that new neighborhood has a ton of dog walkers. And they're nice little old ladies. I'm building a skating rink, so I'd see these little old ladies all day long as I'm moving around my neighborhood. And they're walking along with their little fluffy and everything else. And I'm thinking, is this just a bunch of little ladies who don't want a fork to get in their dog's paw? Or is this real, or is what is
Well,
this?
they need to think it through, because the wooden forks, not only do they have the same possibility to stab your dog, but they could leave a splinter behind.
Well, yeah, and I think there'll be less of them because people won't eat with wooden forks. So takeout will go down. They probably won't drop them as much, but I think they think that those will mysteriously disappear. So then I got on and I talked to you about it, and I said, well, is it true? Because and it's funny because right away the guys in the back are like, Paul, they're finding plastic in people's brains, and they're finding plastic in people's bones, and they're finding plastic everywhere. And I'm like,
They are?
okay, I guess. I hear about it. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher, a medical researcher. So if you say so.
Well, our government did a series of papers on this, and
okay.
I'll take you through it to some degree, but in essence, they actually didn't make health risk to humans a for sure thing. There was no guarantee that any research. So in other words, there is no quantifiable research that the Canadian government has done that says there's a health risk to it. Associations seen in animal or high exposure human studies don't prove causation in everyday life for humans. It's just, we don't have that same interaction. And I want to back you up just a little bit, because as I started reading about this, it kind of bothered me that we're following this from a virtue signaling standpoint. Now, I'll just say this statement. We're not switching to wooden forks because of proven direct dangers to human health. We're switching because of environmental damage, waste management failures, and precaution, not because science has shown plastic forks are poisoning people. Okay, so we're making the assumption that it is possible, because it can happen to animals, that it will happen to humans. Okay.
Okay.
So here's some points in favor of what you're saying. They're a massive pollution problem, right? But they're not a human health crisis.
So an eyesore.
It's an ice and a processing, and I'll get to that. Trying to reduce plastic waste in nature. Okay, that I respect. If that's what we're doing, we want to keep the place nice. That's great. They're expensive to manage as waste. That's the number one problem here. Municipalities spend huge amounts of money on landfills, stormwater filtration, all these things where a fork might be part of the danger utensil.
Got it.
Most recycling, by the way, of plastic cutlery just basically doesn't happen. And here's why. Plastic forks are too small, they're contaminated with food, and they're made of mixed resins that sorting facilities don't want.
Oh.
So
okay.
They almost end up in the landfill anyway. So there's no
recyclability.
There's no recyclability to the forks. And I think that's one. So if you think about it, it's that they can't be recycled. Okay, so now we do understand all of that stuff. Having said that, there's some ways around it. This is a precautionary policy, really. It's not evidence-based on human harm, but that's what we keep hearing. And so I'll say this to you. Symbolism and politics are what's going on here. A wooden fork is visible proof that our government's doing something for the environment and for human health, even though we haven't necessarily determined that it does have an effect on human health. But here's a trade-off that nobody really says, Paul. Wooden forks are not automatically better for the planet. We got to log. We've got to take down trees to do it. We got to process them, transport them, the energy used to make them, the water used to make them, and the industrial treatment, in some cases with the chemicals, will make those forks as useless as a plastic fork by the time we're done with it. Okay. So their total environmental footprint can be similar to plastic, basically. So in my mind, this is less about human health, right? And more about saying, we're doing something for the environment. We're not doing plastics anymore. But the reality is the reasons that they're giving us are a little more fear-mongering, I think, than reality. That's my own opinion. I look forward to hearing your screaming and yelling about that. Wood versus plastic, are we being misled? I'm curious.
Okay, so a couple of things, right? And for those of you, this is first-hand experience. So at one point in my life as a young man, I was a sanitation engineer.
Okay.
All right. Garbage man. Right.
It's a very fancy name.
Great job for a couple summers. And I did.
For sure.
Yeah. So while driving the truck, I had multiple routes. And quite frankly, Wednesdays, I used to use the recycle. I used to be on the recycle crew. Those days, recycle was only on Wednesdays. My learning from that was that after 1 p.m, recycling was done, and the rest of our recycling pickup till 5 or 6 o'clock at night went to the dump. That still exists. So for those of you who think all your recycling, for all your blue bins and everything you're putting in it are actually going somewhere and being sorted and recycled, I have bad news for you. That's not happening, right? I think more than half of it goes into a landfill, regardless of whether we do it or not.
Right.
We don't have the recycling capabilities to get that into play. And we haven't. We had never caught up to that. Unfortunately, we do a lot of recycling. We do a lot of sorting. It's all good stuff. We just haven't caught up to it.
Yeah. And I think that's not widely known, by the way, among the average Canadian, that a certain amount of your recycling does end up in landfill regardless.
So if you're looking for something to champion, so this is where kind of a couple things. If you're looking for something to champion that we actually increase our recycling facilities and do more and get it all recycled.
Right.
Right. So that's something we
don't put the cart before the horse on this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The next thing is, having lived in the US, lived in Canada, right? It's a very interesting thing. Americans in cities do these cleanup days. So what they do is they go along, and when the spring comes, they actually get together. They give everyone an X, one of those orange X vests. They give them gloves. They give them bags. We used to do this in Canada to our parks and stuff. I don't know where it went.
We did used to do that. That was a big part of our communities. Yeah.
Yeah. And guess what we did? We went around and we picked up all the garbage in our parks and on our off-ramps and our everything else, and we cleaned them up as citizens. And politicians used to champion it. Councilors used to have cleanup day in their parks and stuff. Do you see that anymore?
Not often.
No, not it
No.
doesn't. It barely
No, we
exists.
leave it to our municipalities to do it as best they can. We figure we're paying for it, let them do it.
Yeah, and we found out last year, and this is just I'm using this. Sorry, City of Toronto. I'll use it as an example. We found out that most of our parks and rec workers who were supposed to clean those parks up and everything else were spending 77% of their time at the Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
When they looked at their trackers on their vehicles. Now, hopefully that's all changed, but we can't depend on just those people to clean our parks and everything. So if you have a pet peeve with the plastics and everything else happening in the community, quite frankly, you should organize a cleanup day.
I got to be honest with you. I think that when we talk about using plastic cutlery, I mean, first of all, will they stop selling plastic cutlery for people's personal use at Costco? Will all of that be eliminated? Is this only at the restaurant level? Are we outlawing this overall? Because if you're still able to buy cutlery at Costco that's plastic for your picnic at home, what is the point of doing this? So I'd be curious to see how far this extends.
It's supposed to extend that far, or even to the dollar stores.
Yeah.
And it had started. Remember when they started this back before the lawsuit? It actually just started, and all the shelves were kind of being whittled down and sold out as far as all this material.
Is that what's going to happen again? This law still maintains that?
Now, here's the craziness of this. Without any Canadian studies, without the government thing, and without sort of more research into this from a Canadian perspective, we are going to do that unless this responsible plastics use coalition now takes this to the Supreme Court. So, and that's a lot of time, effort, money that has to take place. I get it. And
by the way, neither of us want unrecyclable garbage. I mean, nobody wants that either. But I think what struck both of us was cutlery is a very small beginning to this, and they're having a hard time processing it already. You know, how is this suddenly a problem? You know what I mean? Like it just seemed a little bit like, I think both of you and I felt, this sounds like virtue signaling.
This is virtue signaling. And so you want a bigger issue to talk about? So let's chat about this for a minute. The second part of this, which I wanted to talk with you about today. Let's talk about salt.
Road salt.
Road salt. Now, okay, so now for those of you, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to see it. Well, you'll see it, but it'll be usually too cold and you're not outside, or you've decided not to walk your dog that day because it's too cold.
Poor Fluffy.
Snowy. Yeah. But salt, we are at the point where we're dropping about 137 pounds per person of salt on our roads.
You got to be kidding me.
No, we're dropping equivalent to an average weighted person in Canada.
Oh my God.
That's how crazy.
That's shocking.
It is shocking. And, those of you understand, growing up in Canada, the amount of salt we drop, your shoes, your boots, everything gets deteriorated, eaten up. And it's road salt. So it's highly corrosive, right? And road salt goes into the water and the runoff and becomes chloride ions, right? That's the beginning of it, or the end of it. And quite the beginning of it, it's used to actually get into the water molecules and allow water to go to a lower temperature. It actually acts as a guard before it freezes. So it delays freezing of water to a lower temperature. That's what they use road salt for. But road salt is heinous.
Well,
so,
yeah.
And we have been using it for decades.
We have,
right?
Yeah.
There's books written about how salt was we used salt as our currency, when Canada first was, discovered. And now we're still using salt. It's low in cost. I know we use it for our winters, but quite frankly, the damage and the things that are starting to happen.
Well, we're seeing like major infrastructures in our major cities. I mean, Calgary just had an incredible water main implosion
twice.
And that's right. It's happened twice this winter already. And they're saying now that's because of the corrosion. You raised another point.
Yeah.
You take a look at the Gardner Depressway in Toronto.
Well, so let's talk, we on this show talk a lot about productivity of our cities, right? So this is where, I guess where we're going with, single use for salt is, quite frankly, we're the second last in productivity per capita in the developed world. used salt that decays our roads that now allowed our Gardner Expressway to disintegrate to the point where big slabs were dropping on people's heads
Yeah.
and cars. Where we've spent years and years and years in resurfacing this damn thing. It's eroded from the underbelly up. We keep doing it. We cut half of it down and forgot about it because the one half, the eastern half,
Yeah.
was so badly eroded that it was dangerous, right?
Yeah. They actually just
Well,
stopped it.
those
Yeah.
those chemicals coming, the combination of those chemicals that were seeping on the spit at the end of the Gardner
Yeah.
and the salt was actually eroding the whole structure so badly we had to chop it, right? And we never put it back because we couldn't put it back.
No.
It wasn't salvageable. We don't tell. I'm sure no one talks about it much. But that's
And by the way, that was a major infrastructure problem in Toronto for traffic. I don't know if you remember how smooth that drive to the east off the Gardner was, but now it's, if you need to go beyond that, you're off on Lakeshore or you've got to take another route.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm reading when it comes to road salt is the environmental damage. Now, if you think that a fork is going to do some damage to your body and to your surroundings, not only is it eating away at our roads and our septic and sewage systems, but it's actually destroying nature.
Oh yeah. So the ecosystem changes that salt happens. Now I'm going to back up for a minute before I go there. But so I want people to just pay attention though, because we're talking about the Gardner, we're talking about major infrastructure. I want them to remember the basic overpass in Laval, right? The Concord basically collapsing and killing 5 people.
That's right.
Right. There's a structure that eroded. Elgo Center Mall in Elliott Lake.
Okay.
2 people as it eroded and collapsed. Like you go back to the States and you look at, when Biden, he might have had some challenges, memory wise and everything else, but he was super challenged with the number of bridges that eroded in the United States when he took over.
Yeah.
Like he had huge infrastructure issues due to salt and erosion. And then, you fast forward in that condo in Surfside, Florida, where basically the pad was put on inappropriately by the pool and the water eroded the whole underbelly.
And that was all salt erosion under there as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is how bad this is. Like, and people, so then you go to the ecosystem. So fast forward, and it's not just the ecosystem. It's not fish. It's not birds. It's not just trees and shrubs and everything else. Because that salt is we're dropping 137 pounds per person on the roads and everything else. We're dropping it on. It's melting. It's running off into our grass, and in the rural communities, it's going down into the septic systems. It's going down into
the rivers and the water
and our wastewater.
Yeah.
And then, as it goes into our treatment plants and it goes into our wells and everything else, it has to be collected out.
We have to desalinate it.
We have to desalinate it. Now, and how successful we're desalinating is another thing, but you figure that amount of salt is creating a huge ecosystem structure. So whether it goes into your fish and you're eating it, whether it goes into, your birds and wildlife and all your vegetables and shrubs, it's making its way into everything.
Yeah.
Right. And that chloride level is so high. Now, what does chloride do for the human body? Oh,
it starts to break down organs.
Exactly.
That's when we looked that up. That was a frightening little bit of business. And it looks like it correlates a little bit. And we don't know. Neither of us are doctors or scientists, but it's kind of interesting that there is this increase in maladies that are caused by this chemical.
Yeah, kidneys. Right?
Kidney disease.
Kidney disease, it's one of those ones that you look at it and you think to yourself, kidney disease is up by a third over a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 in 10 people have some form of kidney disease. Now,
it's sort of an interesting comparison, if you will, right? Because we're talking about plastics that we don't have necessarily. Listen, I'm hoping that plastics are not killing us all, but we don't really have human, as it even says in the government document, and I actually can pull it up. Yeah. There is no proof that this has an effect on humans as it does on some animals that we've tested. Meanwhile, we know the effect of the toxic, byproduct of salt that we put on our roads, and we refuse to make a correlation and change it. And it's at the same time disintegrating our country to the tune of over $1 billion a year in repairs.
Yeah.
By the way, we spend $250 million a year on municipal salt.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's the city of Toronto.
No, this is across Canada.
Wow.
So we have about 500 million tons of road salt across the country each year, and that's about $50 per ton.
Wow.
Yeah.
So relatively cheap, but quite frankly, a lot of it.
Well, hold on. There's more, because that doesn't cover storage, handling, application, environmental mitigation, because where you put this salt, everywhere around it is dead there afterward. So you have to account for that property around and long-term damage and corrosion costs. That's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's interesting. We're about $1 billion a year into keeping our roads safe. It seems like a portion of that, so about 400 million of that per year goes directly to the application of salt.
Right. So you think to yourself, okay, so salt came way before plastics.
Yep.
Right. So at this point, can we not figure out a replacement for salt? So, if we're looking for an environmentally friendly thing to tackle, which I'm all for, want to be healthy, want to live as long as I can healthy, right? What do we go tackle? To me, my priority list, I would go tackle salt. Like, I would find a way to reduce the amount of salt I'm dropping on the roads. Now, there's some sand is the obvious one, quite frankly.
There's another one that they're using, I think, is like a beet
juice.
Beet juice.
Yeah. Brine.
Brine is another one. Yeah.
Brine.
Yep.
They even use actually the overflow remnants of vodka. Works the same way, I've seen. So and quite frankly, Mike, with all the chemical engineers, all the chemists, all the brilliant engineers that are in the world today, you can't tell me there's not a replacement for this.
Well, let's do this. You
can't tell me we can't figure this out, because this is not a...
Why don't we do this? Why don't we so we spend almost $52 billion a year fixing the corrosion issues from salt, okay?
Yeah.
What if we took $1 billion and just made a plastic utensil processing plant?
Yeah.
Okay, problem solved. Meanwhile, can we focus on what's happening with the environmental and human effects of salt? We should probably really focus on that right now and save ourselves maybe half of $51 billion a year. There has to be some fix for this. And Paul, I don't know if you've seen any articles about it this year. I've seen all of the articles about the corrosion issues like we saw in Calgary.
Yep.
Downtown Saskatoon had the same problem. Toronto's got all kinds of issues with our infrastructure, as we've been told that we're resewering so much of the city.
Yeah.
So this is down east. It must be worse. So we got to have some kind of solution to this.
Well, what is the long term? And this is for the bigger cities with the condos and the infrastructure and all the things we put in. Today's problems for this infrastructure that was 50 years ago,
right,
or 60 years ago. So we're seeing the impacts of the salt erosion on all these things, whether it be our homes, whether it be our buildings, whatever.
Yeah.
Now what's going to happen when it gets further down the road and we see the erosion on the major condos, business, major buildings, all these things we're going to see are subways.
Well, in Toronto, I don't know if it's related. There's a major piping and plumbing issue in a huge amount of the building. A huge percentage of the buildings in Canada actually are having an issue where plumbing needs to be replaced because of corrosion. Not just the salt in the water, obviously, the kind of piping that was put in at the time. It's all being replaced.
Yeah.
But you have to know now that this amount of salt and desalinization, whatever we have to do to it, the damage is almost $52 billion a year. We have to find a solution that's going to save money on that, that will be environmentally friendly. And what the hell? Throw the forks problem at it too.
Yeah.
I
agree.
I don't want to come off, Paul, like I don't want environmental change, because I do think we need to pollute less and we need to use plastics less. But I do think some of our priorities are a little bit mixed.
Yeah. Let's tackle the things we can fix and the things that have high priority, and let's put those other things on the back burner a little longer. Again, if we need to get them, and it does turn out they are toxic, and if we can prove it, we do our own studies and we know they do, then let's go tackle it. But
but right now we know the toxicity the problem that we have with salt. We're just kind of
We
ignoring
see
it.
We don't even have to. We
Right.
touch it. We can go look at it. We drive on it. We see the gardener.
Yeah.
We know these things. So, those poor people in Calgary, how long did they go last summer without a shower?
Weeks.
Well,
By the time
almost
it was-
a month and a half, right?
Yeah.
There were people I knew that were actually leaving for the summer to come back because the restriction on water.
Right.
Yeah. And
Wow.
they're coming to see their family. So,
Do we sound like two grumpy old men today?
yeah.
All right. We did a good job then.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe, tell a friend, and for goodness sake, throw some sand or some beet juice on your driveway and keep the environment right where it is. And listen, if you'd like to reach out to us, don't hesitate. You might have an opinion about our opinions and our discussion. We'd love to hear it. We've got thick skin, and you probably have some ideas we hadn't thought of. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. See you next time.